I think one central challenge of planning is legitimacy of government as a key institution that should be involved in bringing change. The legitimacy of government is under attack in many different parts of the world. So that has to be re-established as a major planning institution. I think the second challenge for planning, at least in the US or West, is the market has been steadily declining, almost collapsed, as you know. And government will have to reconstruct that market. And the third challenge, I think, for planning would be how to involve citizens in democratic countries in a way in the decision-making process which is manageable, which doesn't make the process of planning too long, at the same time involve people. I think that the profession of planning has not done that well combining theory with practice. And in part because if you look at the history of the profession, when it first started after Second World War, in a formal way, there was some planning before, but after the war, the theories looked very holistic and very neat, whereas the problems were changing because migration was starting, both in let's say, United States, from the south to the north of African American people, and in India from the rural to the poor. And somehow the outcomes were never the way we had expected. So planning as a field came to be questioned because it couldn't explain the outcomes very well. Cities in the south are going to face even larger number of people migrating from the rural to the urban areas, and they have to be given the opportunity to live a decent life. So they have to be housed, they have to find jobs, the children will have to go to school. It's a huge transformation, and that transformation has to be managed in a city. A second problem, I think, connected to that is generally providing education for large number of people, and good education. So India, I think, has tried and have, since our independence, we have had taken the decision that everybody should have advanced education, etc., but we haven't been able to implement it as effectively. So implementing things well with limited resources is a huge challenge of planning. A third problem that I think these countries will face is to catch up with other industrialized countries. Industrialization is about catching up, and some countries have done better than others. But as the speed of industrialization picks up, it brings incredible amount of social changes within the family, between the individual and the society, between individual and the state, and those have to be managed. People who practice planning have to understand the broad picture. You must understand the broad picture as a frame, and within that, you will be asked to solve certain problems, either, let's say, water, or transport, or housing, or education, or health. And people will expect planners to be more efficient, more trustworthy, more technically knowledgeable, more politically democratic, and gender awareness, but a group of people who can play that mediating role between these huge changes that we are unleashing and the effect on the lives of ordinary people. As a private institution, it has a very different demand on it because India, in the very beginning, education was always associated with public. That is public, it's a public job, it's a government's job. So it's now only we are beginning to realize that private sector is not just interested in making money, it has also interested in doing good things for the country. And so in educational terms, for a first private university in planning, it has to be able to show that it's not for the elite only. I do think one of the biggest challenges you'll face is if you really want to produce innovative curricula. Innovative curricula means innovative materials that the students will have to read. They have to be produced. The material that I have seen in India, and I know I'm looking at EPW, looking at other journals, Nagar Lok, I have to say I'm somewhat disappointed by the type of discussion. India has a huge critical line of thinkers, but you need to go beyond criticality to say, let's do it this way. And that means you have to struggle with things on the ground that we have tried with a lot of sympathy that things can be made better. And that production of that material is a huge task. Teaching is teaching is an art. And so you need a group of people who can play that role and who will not be just strict masters, saying, why haven't you done that? I'm not going to give you a good grade. Teaching is not disciplining. Teaching is to make somebody else's, what they have inside, bring it out. With the assumption that each one of us bring to the table something good, that we have some strength. So if IIHS can create that reputation, that it produces interesting material, it has a group of young people who have different theory of learning, and of course that's the most important, is that it is connected to the real world, that the kinds of things that are being discussed are actually problems relevant to India, very relevant to India, understood in Indian terms, Indian categories. I think then you have a long way to go. I mean, you can be very successful.